Welcome to ACOS, All Kinds of Stuff, the podcast that, just like its host, has a hard time focusing on just one thing. So we talk about a little bit of everything. Glad you're here. Let's get this party started.
Welcome to ACOS. This is your host. This is our first sports edition. And I'm a big Florida State football fan, and we'll get into the whys of all that at some point. My first sports edition, I'm going to talk about the Fsu football schedule for 2022 because it did get released this last week by the ACC. Now, in a nutshell, and I'll come back to all this at some point about why I'm an FSU fan and where I think that program is at, but I'm going to just say, as an overall umbrella, that I am an optimistic FSU fan. Like, I am that guy that no matter how things have gone the last few years, as soon as the national championship is over, I will text all my friends and I will predict that the Florida State Seminoles will win the national championship the next year. Now, the last few years, that prediction has been a joke, and it's funny and it's comical, but I do have the hope that we get back there someday. Now, do I think we will ever get back to where we were in the 90s? I don't. It's a lot like the NFL. I don't know that we will ever see another run like what Florida State had in that 14-year period. Even the Nick Saban Alabama teams have not reached some of those pinnacles that they were able to reach. So I don't know that we'll ever see it. It's just, like I said, it's like in the NFL. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are done because I think as long as you have the talent they have on offense, they'll always have a chance to win. But I'm not sure we'll ever see another deal where the New England Patriots are in and out of the Super Bowl. Almost every year, you're pretty sure they're at least going to get there. I mean, because we know Buffalo's good. The Bengals, I'm assuming this is the worst the Bengals will be. I think they're only going to get better, and they're going to the Super Bowl. And I think that goes down to college football. College football's changed. And you could literally win every week. You could literally get beat every week. And I think Florida State proved that last year. The last half of the season, we were a lot better than we were the first half of the season. But that second game of the year, 90s Florida State don't lose that game. But we live in a different world, and, I'm okay with that. It's comforting. I always tell my dad, and you'll hear me talk a lot about my dad because I say this all the time. My dad's not only my best friend, but he's an ex-coach. So that's my favorite thing about watching any football game on TV is he's watching it too, and we communicate, we call, we text through the whole thing. But it's comforting to be a fan and know that no matter how bad they're going to be, you stay a fan. Like, I get mad. I used to yell at the TV. I don't do that anymore. And I'll get upset and I'll get frustrated. But when I wake up the next day, Florida State Seminoles are still my favorite team. And that's comforting because it's like I don't break up with them and then I have to go find a brand new girlfriend to start a brand new relationship. I'm with Florida State till the bitter end. And I'm a Norvell fan. And I think a lot of times you have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, if we were to get rid of this guy, who are we going to get that would be better? And the current Florida State program, I will honestly tell you, I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of guys coming, especially if you get rid of Mike Norvell after you got rid of Willie Taggart and the way Jimbo left. I don't think people are just going to come knocking down the door. So I'm going to be a fan of whoever's coaching them and whoever's playing for them. So the last part of this under the umbrella before we go through the schedule is I do feel like Florida State has bettered themselves since the end of last year. Now, I know on early signing day, we had quite the, I don't know how you would put it. We'll just say we all know what happened with he who will not be named. But I don't think we need to have a ton of hate for him because while he was recruited to Florida State for that long period of time, he helped get some guys that did come. I don't know that guys like A.J. Duffy and Sam McCall come without the recruitment that he who will not be named helped us with over those years. And I'm not going to lie, I think we're going to look up, and I have no reason, no evidence, just a gut feeling. I think we're going to look up and be really happy that Azrae Thomas came to us. I hope I'm saying that name right. It's how I read it. But there's just something about that kid from what I've seen and what I've watched and what I've read that I think we're going to, I'm not saying we had to pick between he who will not be named and him, but I think we're going to be really happy that we got that guy. But if you look across our positions, we've improved almost every weakness we had. Now, again, this is not the Florida State of old. We still got a long ways to go. We still need a lot of playmakers. We're just, it's not the same. But when you think of it as where Florida State has been the last 2 or 3 years, and then you look at the recruiting class and the transfer portal class that we're getting, I would say that we're one of few teams with the win-loss record that Florida State's had the last few years that have that good of a recruiting class and that good of a transfer portal. You know, I think our defense, I don't think they're going to take as big a drop as what a lot of people might think. You know, we lost Jermaine, and man, what a loss and what a season. But, you know, with Cooper and Lovett coming back and the back end of it getting better, and I like the linebacker transfer portal recruits. Do I, again, I'll say this a million times. Do I think it is Florida State of old? No, I do not. But I think it's better than last year. I worry about the running back room a little bit. Huge Trayshawn Ward fan, huge Toafili fan, but, you know, Corbin was good, and Corbin carried a lot of the weight down the stretch. But I do think these guys, plus the addition of Rodney Hill, plus, I don't know, the Oregon kid, the injury scares me a little bit, but, you know, take a chance. So the running back room scares me a little, but I'm also not overly worried about it. I feel like we've improved on the offensive line. I feel like our receiver room has flipped. I'm not going to say it has drastically improved, but I think it has a chance to be. I think it has more of a upside right now than it did a year ago. The additions in the transfer portal, I mean, we can't be naive and say every one of them is going to pan out, but you got it. I think they have a better chance to pan out than what they did a year ago. You know, and then of course, offense coordinator. I'm a Texas guy, so I'm not right in the middle of it like all the Tallahassee, Florida State Seminole podcasts I listen to. But I think we're going to be all right. You know, I understand that we got better as the year went on last year, but I go back to the second game of the year last year, and I have a hard time getting over some of that stuff. I've said it to my father a million times. I don't see how Jordan Travis plays almost every snap against Notre Dame, and I loved the story just like everybody else did when Mackenzie Milton came in. But how does Jordan Travis go from being pretty much the guy that I do not think was coming out of that game had he not been injured to the very next week, when you barely lose to Notre Dame, to the very next week, just getting a handful of, I would say, almost entirely gadgety snaps. Like, I've had a hard time getting over that. And I don't think that kind of stuff will happen anymore. And I think that kind of stuff cost us some victories. So that's it in a nutshell. And I will get more in depth with my Florida State love. And I'm not going to do all Florida State because I want to talk about the Super Bowl and all that on this podcast. But today is all Florida State. So I'm going to go through this schedule, and I don't have all of the details that, again, I listened to the Built for Playmakers podcast, the No Cast, the Wake Up Award Chant, several others. They have a lot more knowledge of the situation than I do. I will tell you, I am as diehard and as loyal and as long. I'm 48 years old, and I believe I became a Florida State fan at the age of 12, and I've not wavered since. I am that guy that when VHSs were around, had literally recorded every game that they played on TV and kept them for years until my house got robbed and they got stolen. Some guy broke into I used to be a DVD and VHS collector, and When I was married in Abilene, we got robbed twice. So somebody has about a decade's worth of Florida State VHS tapes of everything that's taken from me that day. If that guy happens to listen to this podcast, and I mean, we're talking, what year is it? 2022. This took place in, oh my goodness, like 2002. So 20 years. So if that guy that took those tapes is listening to this 20 years later, I'd love to have him back. All right, so let's get to the schedule. Now, I will say, overview of the schedule, there's a couple things I really like about it. Guys, Florida State's always going to have a hard schedule because they play hard teams. Okay, so I don't think we're ever going to look at it and be like, well, that's an easy schedule. But there were some things on the 2022 football schedule that I think have been missing a little bit from the last few years. The first thing I noticed is since we're playing a week 0 game, we got 2 open weeks. And when you have a quarterback like Jordan Travis, who I am a gigantic fan of, but he gets banged up a lot, and he's going to run the ball a lot, and he's going to take a lot of hits, I think having the 2 open weeks for Jordan Travis is huge. And it's also when those open weeks fall, especially the first one. So that's overview number 1. The other thing I would say to this is I don't believe anybody has an open week before they play us. Now, there's a couple of teams that have maybe an extra day or two, like maybe a Thursday or Friday game, and so they have an extra day or two to prepare, but nobody has an open week before us. And I do feel like the ACC has kind of screwed Florida State on schedules in the past, but I think this is one of the best ones we've had in a long time. All right, so let's get at it. I'm going to predict wins and losses as I go. Let me get a Post-it note here and a pen so at the end I can see what I think Florida State's record's going to be. Now, I said at the beginning I'm an optimistic Florida State fan, so I'm going to try to do this realistically, but I do tend to venture towards the optimistic side because why not? It makes me a lot happier on February 3rd to be optimistic, so I'm just going to be it. All right, so first game of the year, Duquesne. I'm counting that as a victory, but last year proved that that's not a guarantee. That's the last thing I'll say about the overall schedule. No matter what I say today about wins and losses, there's a disclaimer with this that I think any game on this schedule we could lose. But for the first time in a while, I will say I think any game on this schedule could be a win, which I couldn't say that last year. If I'd have done this, if I was doing podcasts last year and I'd have done a Florida State schedule, there's no chance I would have said that I think there's a chance, they have an outside chance to win every game. But I think they do on this schedule. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated. In any stretch of the imagination, they're going to lose their fair share. I'm just saying I think every game, depending on how the season's going, right now you could look at every game and you could justify them winning, but you could also justify them losing. All right, but we're going to count Duquesne as a victory. All right. Then we go that next week, Labor Day weekend, we go to New Orleans to play LSU. Now, I will say I've already booked my hotel. I don't have tickets yet because I didn't quite have the money to do that at the time, but I'm hoping to come across some tickets. But I think that's going to be a really fun game. And, okay, let me think about this. So I've got Duquesne down as a win, and I said I'm going to be optimistic. I would love to put that one right down the middle. I'm not a gigantic Brian Kelly fan, but I do think he's a good coach. But he's new, and that's a tough deal when a brand new coach is playing a pretty solid opponent that early in his tenure at a school. Now we know LSU has athletes. I would venture to guess overall picture he has better athletes than he had at Notre Dame, and I would also venture to guess that. I mean, unless they have just totally fallen off the recruiting completely, they're at least going to be equal to what Florida State puts on the field, if not better. And I don't see that as a neutral site game. I know that's what it's listed as, but playing LSU in New Orleans is by no means neutral. Okay, so right now, I'm going to put that down as a loss. But I may come back to that before we're done here because I really think Florida State's going to put on a good show. I think they're going. I think every night they're going to represent well, but I do think that night against LSU, I sense it being a lot like last year's Notre Dame game. I think they're going to put themselves in position to win. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to put a star by that one, just put by the loss. And if I don't like my win-loss totals when I'm done with this, I'm going to come back to it. All right, so we're open the next week. So that's the first time, I'll tell you, I think the open date falls in a great place because LSU is going to be a physical game. And so that's going to give us a chance for our quarterback to get back healthy if he needs to. All right, then we come back on Friday night, September 16th. Now, I'm used to Florida State having a Friday night game. I'm not used to them having two, and I'm not used to them having a Friday night game this early in the year. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. We may have, but it does seem pretty early. Friday, September 16th at Louisville. Whew, I think that's going to be a tough game right there. It falls right in that category. I think Florida State could win that game, but I think they're going to have to play really well. I go back to last year's Louisville game, and we had a horrendous first half, and we played a lot better in the second half. And I do think all of these early games put that asterisk behind it, but last year we were not, as a program, bought into Jordan Travis yet. I am not sure why. But I think unless something crazy happens between today, February 3rd, and our first game, Saturday, August 27th, I think we're going to be pretty bought into Jordan Travis. So let's say Jordan Travis is healthy. Whew. We're not going to have a defense. We're not going to have somebody like Jermaine on the edge. I do think Jared Verse has a chance to get there, and I think Cooper and Lovett coming back allows him a better opportunity to grow into that role quicker than if those two guys had gone. Okay, I said I'm going to be optimistic, but I'm trying to be realistic. I'm going to go a loss right there. Okay, so we're going a loss to Louisville. So we started with the win at Duquesne, and then we have lost to LSU, and we have lost to Louisville. So like I said at the beginning, I may come back and change one of those because I think we're a better team than that. Okay, so Saturday, September 24th, the next week, we've got Boston College. I'm chalking that up as a victory. All right, I think that's a cold weather team coming to Tallahassee in September, where the temperature's probably going to be in the upper 80s, low 90s. Boston College is not one of the teams I feel like year in, year out has ever really got Florida State's number. They've snuck up on us a few times, but there's been times I think Boston College was probably the better team over the last few years because we've been so down, and Florida State has still pulled out the victory. I remember last year's game, and it just felt so ho-hum, but it really never felt like Florida State wasn't going to win it. So we're going to go victory right there against Boston College, which brings us back to 2-2. All right, I'm adding some notes to my deal so I can remember who I said we're going to lose to and who I said we're going to beat. All right, so the next week, October 1st, we got Wake Forest at home. Again, I really like this. I like this stretch. So we had that open week. We went to Louisville, and that's going to be a tough game. But then you got 2 in a row at home, and I really believe you can win both of those games. And I know Wake Forest beat us probably a wider margin than anybody did last year, but I'm one of those guys that will watch a game, and no matter the score, you can see, if you really watch games, you can see that the score is really not always indicative of what happened. I'm going to come back and talk about the same thing with Clemson. I did not watch that game and feel like we were that close to beating Clemson as the score says. Not because of Clemson, but because of us. But I don't feel like Wake Forest was that much better than us. Quarterback play, assuming we're healthy, is going to be much more consistent and better by the time we play Wake Forest. And for whatever reason, I just feel like our defense is going to have a much better clue of what they're trying to accomplish. So we're going to go a win right there. So we're now sitting at 3-2. All right, now we have 2 tough ones in a row. And this is a tough stretch, guys, to go at Louisville, Boston College at home, Wake Forest at home, and then go to NC State. I don't see any way. I mean, I think I'm being overly optimistic if I put that one as a victory today. Now, I may come back and change that if we sneak up on LSU or sneak up on Louisville and things are rolling a little bit. But at NC State, I think that's going to be one of the hardest ACC opponents we play. I think it's going to be one of the toughest at locations that we play. So I'm going to put that one down as a loss. Do I think we can win it? Absolutely. But I want to be real today. I don't want to leave this deal and be like what I would be when I was a young 40-year-old and just saying whatever, where we're going to be undefeated every year. I want you to come back to this podcast because you think it actually is factual. All right, so we are now 3-3 with Clemson coming to the house. Okay, so I think Clemson's on the way back to reality. I think they plummeted back towards that last year. By the time we played them, they weren't. I've always said this about college football more than the NFL. If you are ranked number 1 or 2 in the nation and you have your sights solely set on the college football playoff and you lose a couple games early in the year that you shouldn't, and yeah, you may still be in the ACC championship conversation, but you are no longer in the playoff conversation. I don't think you see that team's best effort anymore for the rest of the year. So I think it's really hard to judge that Clemson team we played last year. But the flip side is this. They lost some good coaches. I don't think Venables is your average coaching loss. I think their defense is still going to be ferocious, yes, but I think it's going to be more of a, less lion and more gorilla. I don't think they're going to be the Kings anymore. So I do think they're going to kind of come back to earth, and I think this is a great time for Florida State to start catching them. So, all right, guys, I've been right down the middle, literally, of optimism and pessimism at 3-3. I'm going to predict a win that day, an ugly win. But getting them at home. Now, I do think having to play at NC State the week before makes it tough because you're going to be banged up. And now you've had this is the 5th game of a tough 5-game stretch. You've got an open week the next week, so there's not that you ever would against Clemson, but there's no reason to hold anything back. But I'm going to predict a win. I think the playing field leveled out between us and Clemson a little bit last year. Do I still think Clemson's going to have the better athletes? Yes, I do, for a while. I still think we're behind them in recruiting. But I'm not a huge Dabo fan. I do think he's done a marvelous job, but I think what he has done is build the culture. I'm not sure how much he's had his hand in the actual strategy of the game, the offense, defense, special teams, and I feel like he lost some really key guys, and that hurts. I think we'll see a good gauge of that with USC and Oklahoma. I'm real interested to see how that dynamic plays out because I think Lincoln Riley's really good at his job, but I think Jeff Lebby's an up-and-comer. So Clemson may have hired some up-and-comers, but I don't think they're going to be Venables yet. So I'm going to predict a win, all right? We're going to beat Clemson at home Saturday, October 15th. So we're going to go into that second off week at 4-3. And I'm telling you guys, if we go into that thing at 4-3, I know this is not what Florida State fans want to hear, but hey, bowl eligibility, I'm for it. I used to just be taking it for granted like everybody else, but I am for it. And at 4-3, if we're 4-3 Saturday, October 22nd, we all better start booking hotel rooms and tickets to at least the lowest tier of the ACC bowls. All right, so we come back after that open week, and we got Georgia Tech at home. And again, guys, I'm counting that as a win. I know Georgia Tech has snuck up on us before, but I never thought it had snuck up on one of our good teams. And I'm not saying this is going to be one of our better teams, but I just got a feeling that we're going to be our coaching staff is going to know a whole lot more about who we are coming into this year than they did last year. I still feel like they were trying to figure out who we are. I think they know that this year. And I think that puts us a bit ahead of where we've been in the past. So I'm going to pick us to beat Georgia Tech at home on Saturday, October 29th. All right, so we're sitting at 1, 2, 3, 4. We're sitting at 5-3 with 4 games left, and we got to win 1 to be bowl eligible. All right, at Miami. Okay, so, and I'll tell this story sometime. I've been to several Florida State games, but I was a high school football coach for 22 years. And high school football coaches, and I'm sure this is the case everywhere, you work 7 days a week. It wasn't like I could just take off to Tallahassee and ignore my duties. And so I never got to go. I only got to go to bowl games. All right, well, this year I am a principal now, as I've stated. I'm no longer coaching. And principals work hard, but we don't work as hard as coaches, and we sure don't work as hard as coaches on Saturday and Sunday. So I was given the privilege by a very dear friend. She took me to Tallahassee to see the Miami Florida State game. Okay, so I will tell you that I am not dead. So I have not seen heaven yet. But if heaven can even come close to comparing to the 2.5 days I spent at Tallahassee watching Florida State Miami, then we're in for a treat when we die. Okay, so that's a blanket statement over how amazing that weekend was. But so going to Miami. Miami's got a new coach. All right? He's a good one. Do I think he's a great one? I don't. But do I think he's a good one? I do. He's had more time. I said earlier with Brian Kelly and LSU, he came from Notre Dame. I said earlier, I think it's going to take some time for those guys to adjust. He's had time, quite a bit of time. Do I think Florida State could go to Miami and win the game? Absolutely. But am I going to pick them to do it again? Now, this is for the podcast. In my head, I'm saying absolutely. I hate them. I got a sign hanging in my bedroom that says, I hate you, the you. But I want to be fair here, so I'm going to go ahead and count that as a loss. All right, so I'm going to say we're going to lose to Miami, but we're going to review all of these here in a minute before I'm done here. It is going to be a dogfight. There's going to be some crazy stuff happens because there always is. I'm not sure Jordan Travis won't have their number. I'm just telling you, that 4th and 14 changes people's lives. So there's a chance he's got their number, and ain't nothing Miami can do about it. But for our sake right now, we're going to put that as a loss. So we are at 5-4, going to Syracuse. That's another tough little stretch right there. Coming back that open week, Georgia Tech at home, at Miami, at Syracuse. I've never thought playing at Syracuse was an easy task whatsoever. But if you're going to be an optimist, you got to pick Florida State to beat those guys. All right, so I'm going to pick us to win at Syracuse. I think depending on what's happened, depending on how healthy we are, it could be a sloppy, ugly game. It typically is. I'm not going to lie. All of the Syracuse games I remember are typically pretty sloppy, but I'm going to pick us to win. All right, so if I'm remotely right, now I got us beating Clemson, but I've also got us losing to NC State and Miami, and I'm not sure, and Louisville, and I'm not sure we're not going to win one of those games. So I think we got a really good chance of going into our second to last game, November 19th, already bowl eligible. I really do. All right, and so we got Louisiana at home, and I think it's funny, and I don't think there's any narrative to be put out here on this, but I think it's interesting that we play Louisiana, which was the new Florida's coach O team, the week before we play Florida, which is obviously his new team. I don't think that matters a bit, but I think it's interesting that happened. So Saturday, November 19th, Louisiana at home, the Raging Cajuns. That's a win, guys. I will say that the one thing that's bothered me about Florida State in recent memory is I have seen a tendency for them to look past opponents. Hopefully, that's starting to get out of their system. That's a tough thing. As a coach that has experience coaching high school kids, that's a tough thing. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them, it is hard to get players to not be looking, especially when it's a Florida, to not be looking at that big rival coming down the road. But the great teams don't. The great teams are going to go out and they're going to beat the teams they're better than, and they're going to beat them bad. So hopefully that's what happens right there with Louisiana. So I'm counting us as a win going in to a Friday night game with Florida at home. And that really threw me for a loop because, man, ever since I can remember, Florida State has been the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But I'm assuming that this doesn't happen unless ESPN has told them this will be a primetime spot. So if that's the case, it's kind of exciting to me. Man, it'll give me something really to look forward to on Friday, especially if it's Friday night. I don't remember who the Friday games were last year. I want to say the Egg Bowl was Thursday night. Typically, there's some good Big 12 and Big 10 games on Friday. I go back in my memory, and I remember there being some really good Big 12 games on Fridays, but I, for the life of me, cannot remember who or what would have been the primetime game on Black Friday. So if that's the case, I'm all in. It'll make Saturday a lot more relaxing. I'll either be upset that we lost or extremely happy that we won, but whatever games are on Saturday, I'll be able to enjoy a little bit. But Friday, Black Friday, November 25th, Florida at home. All right, so the same narrative, brand new coach, but now he's had a whole year. They're recruiting. Like I said, it's February 3rd. I feel like they got off to a pretty rough start. I feel like it's gotten better. I feel like, they may have passed us on the actual – I mean, their talent is going to be better than us. We got to know that. We're not caught up to them yet. They've had several years head start on the recruiting. But, man, do I dislike these guys. We're already bowl eligible, so I really don't see the point – and having to predict this win or loss based on bowl eligibility. So I am just going to, from pure dislike, I'm going to predict a win right there. Now, I know a lot of people are already turning this off, saying this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Hear me out. I'm not saying we're going to win. I'm saying I hate him. So I think I'd have a really bad rest of a random Thursday afternoon if I said they were going to beat us. So I'm going to say we're going to beat them. All right, so looking back at this deal. So 2 Friday night games, open weeks falling at really good times. 2 open weeks to help us stay a little healthier. A coaching staff and program that I feel is going to come into the season with so much clearer of an identity than they have since Norvell has been there. I'm telling you, every single game could be a defeat, but I'm also telling you every single game could be a victory. Now, I don't mean 12-0. I'm saying that week in, week out, if you just take each game and separate it from the overall picture, Florida State's going to have a chance. Now, I've got us winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. 2 of those wins are Clemson and Florida. All right, so I think 8 is pretty accurate. I think that puts us at 8-4. I think that's pretty accurate. I think how we get to 8 might not be exactly like this because obviously Clemson could sneak up. They're not sneaking up on anybody. Clemson could beat us. Florida could beat us. But go back to what I said, like it started at the very beginning with LSU. I think that's going to be a toss-up. I think today it's a heads-tails toss-up who wins that game. And I'm not sure as I get close because I've never been a firm believer in LSU. Now, the Joe Burrow year to me is an anomaly with what LSU typically is. They're usually really talented, not always as well coached as what people will tell you they are. Really good on defense, and just take away the Joe Burrow, you're not that great on offense. All right, well, Florida State, I feel like they're going to come in with the best offense they've had as long as we don't screw it up ourselves. And I think their defense, I do, and I may be wrong about this, guys, but I think overall defense is going to be better than it was last year. So I think we could get to 8-4, but that Clemson win and that Florida win that I predicted, it could easily be replaced by LSU. I think it could really easily be replaced by Louisville and NC State. I think Louisville's been in our head ever since Lamar Jackson just beat the ever-living dog out of us. I think that I think that's a crazy thing to say, but that was such a lopsided game. I think they've been in our head ever since. But they kind of got out of our head in the second half of last year, so we sure can't come out and have a bad first half because they can play. They got a good quarterback there. So we're going to have a good full game. But we could beat Louisville. We could beat LSU. We could beat NC State. We could go to Miami and beat them. So, yeah, I like my totals, 8-4. I like it a lot. How we get there, I think could be a whole lot of different ways. But I ain't going to lie. If we got there, and one of those included beating the University of Florida, that would make my Thanksgiving weekend greatness. All right, guys, so this was our first ACOS Sports Edition. We have just gone through the 2022 Florida State football schedule. I think our next sports edition will probably have something to do with the Super Bowl. But we'll see. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day.
You have been listening to ACOS Podcast, All Kinds of Stuff, with your host, David Ritchie, and I sincerely want to thank you for stopping by and giving us a chance. The music you hear now and the music you hear at the beginning of our podcast was done by my 13-year-old son, Hayden Ritchie. And everything I do is inspired by not just Hayden, but my other son, Logan Ritchie, as well. You can find me at Twitter at ACOS Podcast. That is capital A, capital K, capital O, capital S, capital P, and everything else is in little letters. At ACOS Podcast. Feel free to follow me, reach out with any questions you have. Have a great week. Thank you for listening.